يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to praise and worship you and give you thanks for all the things you continue to provide for ourselves and our families. Father, we humbly ask for forgiveness for all the times we have offended you, when we forget to acknowledge your presence in the image of our brothers and sisters, and for moments we fail to be good stewards of the blessings you have given us. Continue to guide and protect each one of us, Lord, that we may always walk in the light of your everlasting love and mercy. Grant us, Father, with your comfort in times of distress and with your strength in times of weakness. Bestow upon us your unending grace and healing, that we may in turn become instruments of gentleness and compassion to others. We ask all this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, with the prayer and the intercession of our Blessed Mother. Amen.
Manama, mabantog ka. Warapoko iling koy ko. O Diyos, kahibulungan ka. Busa ikaw lang ang simbahon ko. Busa ikaw lang ang alagaran ko.
Isang magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Kumusta po kayo? Na-miss po namin kayo. At alam po natin na inabangan natin talaga ang pagbabalik ng ating National Drug Education Program or Ndep webinar series. Na-miss niyo po ba yung ating Okay sa DepEd jingle na naririnig tuwing hapon at meron tayong Ndep webinar noong isang taon? Yung kanta po ni na Miss Luz Viminda Ikawalo, Ma'am Everdina Hiltendes at ni Miss Elaine Joy Ikawalo na pinerform ni Miss Richeline Mayoral. Na-miss ko rin po na marinig yon at makasama kayo tuwing hapon para sa Ndep webinar series na ito. Welcome po muli sa ating webinar para sa 2021. Marami po kaming mga bagong inihanda para sa inyo. Ako pa rin po si Gian Adaw from the School Health Division ng Bureau of Learner Support Services na makakasama ninyo para sa episode na ito. I'm really excited po na makamingle po ulit kayo at least sa episode na ito and matuto muli tayo ng maraming bagay patungkol sa drug education, lalo na ngayon sa panahon ng pandemya. And katulad po ng sabi natin, marami pong bago na hinanda ang School Health Division para po sa ating bagong series na ito. Same topic, same important topic, pero new things are in store for all of us. Kasama na po dyan ang bago nating makakasama para sa hapon na ito ang ating co-host, ang ating pong isang kasama sa School Health Division, a fellow champion of health and of our young people, of our learners. Gusto ko po ipakilala sa inyo si Miss Irmi Garcia.
Ayan.
Hi Irmi, kumusta?
Hello, good afternoon sir. Thank you so much Sir Gian for that kind introduction. So muli, maraming salamat po sa ating mga participants across the country sa inyong pag-aabang para sa first episode ng ating Ndep webinar series, kung saan tayo ay muli na namang magkakatipon-tipon para sa isang session na puno ng kaalaman na ating ibabahagi sa ating ng ating mga invited resource persons, sir.
Ayan, nasan ka ba Irmi nung 2020 Ndep webinar series?
Actually, sir, nasa bahay po ako noon, sir. Hindi pa ako, bumalik ulit sa DepEd, sir. So, ayan, tumutulong po sa family and I'm busying myself with other things, sir, na makakapag-improve sa akin as a person.
Ayan, so nakakatuwa lang na kung si Irmi bagong kasama natin ngayon, for sure marami rin tayong mga bagong kasama na first time na nanonood ng Ndep webinar series. Kung kayo po ay mga first timers, we welcome you to this Ndep webinar series. Pero kung kayo po yung kasama sa libo-libo nating mga fellow champions of health and of our learners for the past year, ito, excited po tayo na ipagpatuloy ang ating bagong webinar series na ito. And tingnan natin, no, this is now the second installment during this pandemic. And nakita natin na bagamat tuloy-tuloy ang ating paglaban sa pandemya na ito, patuloy pa rin naman yung mga iba-ibang usaping pangkalusugan natin sa offline kalusugan, sa DepEd. Kaya tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung ating mga ibang programa at ibang mga serbisyo, katulad na nga ng National Drug Education Program.
Correct. So I agree with you on that, Sir Gian. And so to formally begin this program na po, we are pleased to have the OIC Director 4 of the Bureau of Learner Support Services, Director Lope D. Santos, for his opening message.
Magandang araw sa ating lahat. Makabuluhang pagdalo sa 2021 National Drug Education Program Webinar Series na inilulunsad ng ating School Health Division, katuwang ang Youth Formation Division, Public Affairs Services, Information and Communication and Technology Services, sa ilalim ng patnubay ng ating Undersecretary for Administration, Yusek Alain Del Pascua, at pamumuno ng ating butihing kalihim ng kagawaran ng edukasyon, Secretary Leonor Magtolis Brownes. Meron po tayong 5 episodes for this webinar series magmula ngayong araw hanggang Oktubre 2021. This webinar series aims to provide information on National Drug Education Program amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Inimbita po natin ang ating mga coordinator ng Ndep at Barkada Kontra Droga, ang ating mga teachers, health personnel, and other non-teaching personnel who are involved in the prevention of substance use. Ang National Drug Education Program po ay isa sa mga flagship programs ng offline kalusugan sa DepEd. It is our comprehensive and holistic approach to address the problem of drug abuse. It was designed to enable all sectors to work collaboratively with the school system as the core, thereby unifying all sectoral endeavors, and it is 5 components, namely curriculum, co-curriculum, teachers and staff development, parent education and community outreach, and monitoring, research, and evaluation. And under this program, the School Health Division conducts capacity building for our personnel who are involved in substance use prevention. And this task is one of the DepEd's function in Executive Order number 66, series of 2018, about institutionalizing the Philippine anti-illegal drugs strategy. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 led to the disruption of normal activities in the educational system. And the suspension of face-to-face classes poses challenges to the department. However, DepEd is committed to find ways to provide learning opportunities for our learners amidst these challenges. The OKD flagship programs adopted the new normal strategies in education. And in 2020, Ndep conducted virtual validation of the search for outstanding Barkada Kontra Droga implementers sa secondary schools at meron po tayong 5 na naideklarang winners. Tayo rin po ay naglunsad ng Ndep webinar series. Nagkaroon po tayo ng 10 episodes mula September to November noong 2020. At inilunsad din natin yung BIBO o Batang Informed Tungkol sa Bisyo o Batang Iwas Bisyo online campaign for tobacco control. and this is a support program or support activity in Ndep. Today, I would like to welcome everyone to the first episode of the 2021 Ndep webinar. Just like in the 2020 webinars, I am sure you will learn a lot from our expert speakers. Sama-sama tayo laban sa droga. Tulong-tulong tayo para sa ating mga mag-aaral na maging control. And this is a support program or support activity in Ndep. Today, I would like to welcome everyone to the first episode of the 2021 Ndep webinar. Just like in the 2020 webinars, I am sure you will learn a lot from our expert speakers. Sama-sama tayo laban sa droga. Tulong-tulong tayo para sa ating mga mag-aaral na maging bibo, batang iwas sa bisyo para sa sambayanang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po sa message na yon, Director Lopez Santos. Nakakatuwa yung pagtatahi-tahi ni Director Lopez, no, sa mga ginagawa natin, reinforcing there as you order for our learners. Thank you very much po again, Director Lopez Santos. Kasama si Director Lopez sa sa mga bago natin, no, sa Ndep webinar series na to, kasi when he joined on board, I think last year.
Yes, so at this point, Sir Gian, we are delighted to be joined by our very own the Chief of the School Health Division, Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao, in introducing our esteemed guest from the Dangerous Drugs Board in delivering his message for our pilot episode. Dr. Dumlao?
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Our speaker is a noble public servant, and he was born and raised in Basilan with a family background known for honest and dedicated track record in good governance. He started his professional career as a young civil servant. In 2010, he was the executive assistant of the Secretary of Social Welfare and Development while serving in a concurrent capacity as advisor for street families and children. In 2011, he was appointed as commissioner representing Mindanao of the National Youth Commission. It was also during the same year when he was appointed as an appeals board member of the Movie, Television Review and Classification Board. From 2015 to 2016, he was also elected as the Vice President of the ASEAN Youth Council, or AYC. He finished his stint in NYC as its acting chairperson during the early months of the Duterte administration. 2017, he was appointed as Deputy Executive Director for Operations of the Dangerous Drugs Board with the rank of Assistant Secretary. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte promoted him 8 months later as the Executive Director of the Dangerous Drugs Board with the rank of Undersecretary. At present, he is the youngest official to be appointed to the said post in the history of the agency since its inception in 1973. In 2019, 25 member states constituting the Organization of Heads of National Drug Law Enforcement Agencies of the Asia and the Pacific region, or HONLEA, elected him as its chairperson. He was the first Filipino elected to the said position and successfully finished his term of 1 year. Recently, he was conferred with a career executive service eligibility by the CES Governing Board, which formally enrolls him in the roster of permanent third-level career officers of the Philippine government. He also serves as the Vice President for National Government Agencies of the NCR CESOS Association. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome the Undersecretary Earl P. Saavedra, Executive Director of the Dangerous Drugs Board. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Magkakasama na naman po tayo dito sa ating tambayan ng talakayan, ang webinar series patungkol sa National Drug Education Program na pinapangunahan ng Kagawaran ng Edukasyon at sinusuportahan ng Dangerous Drugs Board. Panibagong series naman po ito ng ating diskusyon at nagagalak po kami sapagkat na-maintain po natin ang momentum ng interes na ipinapakita ng bawat isa na nakakasama natin dito sa virtual platform. I must say, kayo po ay mga tunay na anti-drug advocates, maging estudyante man, guro o concerned citizen na lumalahok sa araw nito. Parati ko po itong sinasabi, hindi lamang sa 4 na bahagi ng classroom natin mailalahad ng mabuti ang halaga ng kampanya kontra iligal na droga. Sa ating ginagalawan ng komunidad, organisasyon, grupo, at pati na rin sa loob mismo ng ating tahanan, nararapat po na patuloy nating ibahagi ang importansya ng pag-iwas sa iligal na droga. Kailangan natin simulan at paigtingin ang kampanya kontra droga sa ginagalawan nating mga tanggapan at paligid. Masususugan natin ito sa pamamagitan ng mga polisiya at programa patungkol sa healthy lifestyle, leadership, and discipline. Para makamtan ang mga adhikain na ito na may magagandang layunin, nais ko pong sabihin na kailangan namin kayo sa kampanya na inilulunsad natin ngayon. Malaking bagay ang inyong partisipasyon sa webinar na ito. With what is expected of you here, I want you to convince yourself that your voice matters. Knowledge will spell out the difference in you. Your role in our campaign against drugs does not have to wait for the future to come. You can help now. Do not be afraid to step up because we are in this together. Bukas po ating gugunitain ang International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking o IDADAIT. Taon-taon, binabalikan natin ang mga hakbang na inilunsad para paigtingin ang kampanya laban sa iligal na droga. Kasama sa hakbang na ito ay ang adhikain na dapat palalong pag-ibayuhin ng ating mga nasimulan upang ganap na makamtan ng Estado ng Drug-Free Philippines. Kahit hindi tayo sama-samang nagtitipon, sabay-sabay naman ang pagpapalawig natin ng mensahe na ang droga ay salot at hadlang sa kinabukasan ng bawat kabataang Pilipino. Maraming salamat sa pagkinig. Tandaan, patuloy po nating hangarin ang mabuting kalusugan ng lahat sa pamamagitan ng ibayong pag-iingat.
Ayan, maraming salamat po sa mensahe na iyon, Yusek Earl Saavedra. Ang ganda nung sinabi ni Yusek Earl, no, na every voice matters. And speaking of every voice matters, shout out lang sa lahat ng ating mga viewers from all over the Philippines. Almost 12,000 viewers tayo ngayon sa Facebook from Davao City, from Batangas, from Bacolod, Cotabato, Iriga, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Lanao del Sur, even Nagcarlan, Laguna, Pangasinan, Butuan, everywhere in the Philippines. Ang ganda nung sinabi ni Yusek Earl na there is interest, there is sustained momentum, and interest from our stakeholders. So lahat talaga po tayo may boses at merong magagawa para sa patungkol sa bagay na ito.
I agree with you, Sir Gian. So to provide context and why we are conducting this webinar, let me call again Dr. Dunlao to give her message. And just to give a brief background, Dr. Dunlao is a medical doctor by profession and has been in the public health sector for already 26 years. She earned her master's degree in public health through a scholarship from the University of the Philippines, Manila, her medical degree from St. Louis University, Baguio City, and her bachelor's degree in biology from the Mariano Marcos State University, Ilocos Norte. Throughout her work, she has been awarded various international scholarships, including the Diploma in Biochemical and Health Information in Mahidol University, Bangkok, Thailand, the Harm Reduction Program course in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, course on Strategies in Life Skills Development for Adolescents in Kasetsart University, Bangkok, Thailand, and recently the training on drug demand reduction for the global trainers in Vienna, Austria. Aside from her current position, she is also engaged in the local and international organizations in various capacities. Governing board member for the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education, Regional Center for Food and Nutrition, advisor for the Private School Health Officers Association, alumna of the Asian Institute of Management on the Leadership Development course, Global Master Trainer of the Colombo Plan's Universal Prevention Curriculum of Substance Abuse, through which she has already served as a trainer in countries including as Malaysia, Dubai, Fiji, Thailand, Myanmar, and South Africa. Global Trainer on Drug Demand Reduction of the United Nations Office Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, and Certified Mediator of the Department. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage our Chief of the Health Program Officer of the School Health Division under the Bureau of Learner Support Services, Department of Education, Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao. Dr. Dumlao.
Isang magandang hapon sa lahat ng ating participants mula sa buong Pilipinas para sa bagong series ng ating National Drug Education Program webinars para sa taong ito. Ramdam na ramdam po namin ang inyong unwavering support and excitement katulad ng ipinakita ninyo sa unang run ng ating webinar series noong 2020. The Bureau of Learner Support Services School Health Division sa pakikipag-ugnayan natin sa Youth Formation Division is committed to continue this advocacy to give more exciting and worthwhile topics related to substance use prevention. Drug abuse can interfere with our learners' ability to be successful in attaining their goals, both academic and personal. We have repeatedly emphasized in our previous webinar series how abusive drug use can cause harmful effects such as physical health issues, mental health concerns, injury, violence, dependency, and worst case scenario, even substance use-related deaths. As health advocates, this is how we frame the issue of drug use and abuse. Itinataguyod natin ang substance use prevention dahil mahal natin ng ating mga mag-aaral at personnel at hangad natin ang kanilang kapakanan, kaligtasan at kalusugan higit sa lahat. Kaya napakaganda ng opening topic natin para sa 2021 Ndep webinar series, Helping Youth Stay Drug-Free Through Literacy. Sa drug prevention work, madalas nating naririnig ang kasabihang, just say no, as in N-O. No. Pero isang bagong slogan ang lumulutang mula sa mga health advocates, ang kasabihang just say no, as in K-N-O-W, no. Hindi lang natin sinasabihan ng ating mga kabataan na mag-say no, mahalaga alam nila at nauunawaan bakit sila nagse-say no. Paulit-ulit tayo sa ating mga adolescent health work. Kailangan inform ang desisyon ng ating learners. Grateful tayo na muli tayong sasamahan ng isa naming kaibigan at partner sa substance use prevention. Professor Grace Ducapante to explain how literacy is very important in helping our learners live a healthy and drug-free lifestyle. Alam niyo po, I can attest that our resource person, being a professor herself and a fellow global master trainer of the Universal Prevention Curriculum, is the perfect person to walk us through the critical role of correct knowledge and information in reducing the risk of drug use. Thank you, Professor Grace, for your full support to DepEd's drug prevention activities. Professor Grace has also always been a reliable partner and resource person in the many activities of DepEd and substance use prevention, not only at the Bureau of Learner Support Services School Health Division, but also in the integration of preventive drug education in the K-12 curriculum. Currently, age-appropriate concepts and messages have been included in health and other related subjects. We are excited how this webinar series can complement and strengthen these concepts. To our Ndep coordinators, tobacco control coordinators, BKD coordinators, youth formation coordinators, our school health personnel, our guidance counselors, our teachers, even our parents who are joining us this afternoon, I hope that we will have a fruitful and enjoyable session. Muli, magandang hapon po.
Thank you very much po, Dr. Dumlao, dun sa message na yon. Hear me, ang galing lang kasi nagma-match-match no, lahat ng mga sinasabi ng ating mga nagbigay ng message so far. So kanina si Yusek Earl, in-announce niya na ngayon ay malapit na ang idadait or observance ng International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. And yung theme pala this year, related din dun sa sinasabi ni Dr. Dumlao na just say no or about knowledge, about correct information, which is share facts on drugs, save lives. So ang galing nung pagkaka-reinforce ng mga message natin. And I think we have had enough messages na to provide context sa gagawin natin no, after this afternoon. And for sure, excited na rin ang ating mga viewers, ang ating mga participants to learn from our resource person na partially na-introduce na or nabanggit na ni Dr. Dumlao. So before siguro natin ipakilala, Irmi, para tuloy-tuloy na yung ating webinar series mamaya, let's just remind our participants na kasi after i-introduce na ating speaker, na tayo sa kanyang message. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have you want things to be clarified during this talk, wag po natin ilalagay sa comment section, no? Meron po tayong create na link that will be shown on your screen in a while. Ayan, so it's bit.ly/Ndep webinar series part 2 feedback. Yan. So punta po kayo dyan sa link na yan and dyan nyo po i-type yung mga questions nyo for our speaker para mamaya sa Q&A natin, tuloy-tuloy tayo. Dyan natin babalikan yung mga questions nyo. Kasi kapag sa comment section, usually natatapunan siya.
I agree with you, Sir Gian. So, sobrang excited ko nga na i-introduce na itong ating guest speaker today. So, handa na ba ang ating mga participants? So, susugan ko lang pala yung sinabi ulit ni Sir Gian na yun nga po sa message ni Dr. Dumlao na ang priority po talaga ng ating kagawaran ay yung welfare ng ating mga learners and personnel na ilayo po sila sa ipinagbabawal na droga. So maraming salamat po sa relentless effort ng ating mga Ndep coordinators and teachers na walang sawa po na magalaw at nagtatrabaho para sa ating kampanya kontra droga. Okay, so going back po, so our resource person holds both an undergraduate and graduate degrees in health education from the University of the Philippines. She has been heavily involved in designing and implementing substance use prevention programs as the director of the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education since 2012. In 2014, she became a member of the Global Masters Trainer of the Colombo Plan Global Center for the Credentialing and Education of Addiction Professionals for the Universal Prevention Curriculum or UPC. Since then, she has been training prevention coordinators and workers from Afghanistan, Colombia, Thailand, Malaysia, Fiji, Kenya, and the Philippines. She is currently a member of the training team in charge of disseminating in the UPC virtually. She is also serving as an assistant professor in the University of the Philippines College of Education, where she teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in the health education. She provides technical assistance to the government agencies, particularly to the Department of Education and the Dangerous Drugs Board. So without further ado, let us give our speaker a virtual round of applause, Professor Francis Grace Ducapante. Professor Grace, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ermina, for that kind introduction. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm now going to share my screen. So I guess I am very privileged to be your first speaker for the second webinar series of the National Drug Education Program. I hope you can see now my screen. Can you see now my screen? Gian? Can you see my screen?
From my end, Prof. Grace, from my end,
Yes.
mas nakikita po namin yung back end. What we can see is yung back end po ninyo.
What do you mean? Not my screen?
We can see the notes, ma'am.
Oh. Let me try again. What about this time? Can you see it
Better.
now?
Yes po.
Okay. Sa buong Bicolandia, Diyos marhay na hapon sa Indugabos, especially to my family in Kasiguran, Sorsogon. To all Ilocanos na imbag nga malem, I'm sending my warm greetings to the family of my husband. To all my fellow prevention advocates, our national drug education coordinators all over the Philippines, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. A blessed afternoon to all our friends outside the country. I am truly blessed to be the first speaker for today's session, and I am tasked to share with you helping youth stay drug-free through literacy. So before I start, I would like to share with you an effective strategy that I'm doing with my classes. So every synchronous class, I start with an emotional check-in activity, and I'm going to try this with you. So welcome to the Fruity Emotional Check. The first thing that I would like you to do is to choose any of these fruits that reflect most your current mood. So if you're very anxious, then you choose a strawberry. If you're doing great, we have avocado. If you're full of hope, despite the pandemic and all the limitations, then choose the apple. So maybe you can use the chat box for this. Strawberry, avocado, apple. Gian? May I know if they are responding? I don't have any access on the chat box. Gian? Hello, am I still on? Miss Ermina, am I
Yes,
still
Professor
on?
Grace, you're still on.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I hope that they are responding to the Fruity Emotional Check-in activity. So I'm asking them to choose their Fruity Emotional This is actually their mood for today. So are you a strawberry, are you an avocado, or are you an apple? So I hope that you are participating through the chat box.
Prof. Grace, makikita niyo po sa comment section on the right side of your screen.
I don't
Marami
have
po
any
tayong
access.
apple. Okay po. Based on what we can see, ang dami pong apple. There's a few avocados. So far, yun po yung dalawang marami.
Thank you so much, Gian, for sharing the responses because I can't read them. I don't have any access. So thank you so much for participating. I'm so happy that despite the limitations of the pandemic, you're still full of hope and you are doing great. So the main point of this fruity emotional check-in activity is to remind us that whatever you are feeling right now, that is totally okay and valid. As human beings, we have the right to feel all sorts of emotions. So we have a continuum, right? So the spectrum of emotion, whether it would be negative, neutral, or positive, that's totally okay. So let's start with that. So whatever you are feeling, you are okay. So at this point, I would like to challenge you with a physical activity and I'd like you to stand. Okay, so let us stand. And what we're going to do is the 6-point challenge. So I'm going to ask you to stand on your left leg. Okay, I hope that you are doing this and just follow the instruction. So you are going to point with your left hand index finger, your left hand index finger, you're going to point the part affected by emphysema. Okay, so that would be the lungs. So you need to point the lungs using the left hand index finger. Okay, now you are going to use your right hand little finger to point the part affected by throat cancer. So of course, you are going to point your throat. Next, you need to use your right hand thumb to point the part affected by gum disease. Of course, that would be your mouth. And this is going to be difficult. You need to use your right knee to point the part affected by infertility or your groin. Okay, so this is a challenge because you are standing on your left leg. Next, use your left elbow to point the part affected by stomach ulcers. So that would be your stomach. Okay, point your stomach. This is the most difficult, the last part. So you need to point with your nose the part affected by heart disease, and that would be your heart. So congratulations if you were able to do the 6-point challenge. You can now take your seats. So if you have observed, all of the 6 parts are affected by smoking. So this activity actually illustrates the effects of smoking on the different parts of the body. And if you had difficulty standing on your left leg, so that is actually a balancing act challenge. If you had difficulty doing that, just imagine our smokers. They have difficulty stopping because we all know that, of course, nicotine is a very complex drug and it's quite addictive. So it's really very important to send the message to our young people to abstain from substance use. It's better not to start. So I hope that you were able to enjoy that first activity. We will have other activities as we go along. So just like what Yusek Earl Saavedra reminded us, we are going to celebrate the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, or IDA-DAIT, on June 26, 2021. So this coming Saturday. But the DTB, or the Dangerous Drugs Board, has prepared several activities. And by tomorrow, there is an activity regarding pods. So you can check the website of the Dangerous Drugs Board to take part in the various activities that were prepared by the DTB. We have a very relevant and timely theme for this year. share facts on drugs, save lives. So I guess that's the reason why I'm here. I'm supposed to share important information with you, and I'm going to contextualize this lecture on literacy. Okay, so preventive drug education in the context of literacy. Just an additional information. Okay, Eat the Diet. So this is a global event that we celebrate every June 26th for each year. And every June 26th, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime releases the World Drug Report. So on June 26th, we are going to know the World Drug Report for 2021. Okay, so that's the trivia. So I have three objectives for this e-presentation. The first one is to discuss the three types of literacy that can be used for preventive drug education. The second is to identify the different ways that we can use to deconstruct an alcohol advertisement. So this is something that you can all relate with, because as of the moment, we don't have any national policy banning alcohol advertisements. So we have them on our television. You can watch a lot of commercials related to alcohol. You can see billboards, and a lot of magazines also advertise alcohol. So we are going to find and explore ways on how to deconstruct these alcohol advertisements. The last one would be your assignment. Okay, I'm a teacher, so I'm going to give you an assignment. You need to practice this literacy competencies that you are going to learn from this short lecture so that you are going to stay healthy and drug-free. So this is a personal challenge. And as prevention advocates, we need to be good role models so that we can spread the message to our learners and, of course, the young people in our community. So this is my intention for today. We are going to actually discern what are the factual information about substances and what are the myths and misconceptions. And then we are going to focus on deconstructing an alcohol advertisement. And finally, we are going to look into some IEC materials that were produced by some of my students in the University of the Philippines. So I'm going to share with you concrete examples of these infographics. So I'm sure you are now ready to learn the literacy framework for preventive drug education. So let's start with this quotation. School is not about repairing all social evils. It is about repairing one, and that is the evil of ignorance. That was actually from Wilson, no, from 1998. And I guess this is a very important reminder for us. The school is not responsible for solving social evils. Our responsibility as educators is to provide the necessary knowledge and skills and to develop solid values among our learners. So the school shouldn't be blamed if we have issues like substance use. Remember, during my presentation last year, I was also the first speaker, if you remember, if you have attended the first webinar series. I actually emphasized the crucial role of the school as a setting for prevention. So for today, I'm going to zero in on the importance of literacy, okay, in the school context. And you need to remember also that the family remains to be the most important protective factor. Okay, please remember that. The family remains to be the most important protective factor. The school should just supplement, okay, the lessons learned in the family. And we need to fill the gaps. Okay, so when it comes to prevention, the most important role of the parents, the responsible adults, the teachers, prevention advocates like us is to be good role models for our young people. If you also remember, during my first session last year, I also emphasized that sometimes good intention is not enough. Okay, so maybe we are very motivated, very much motivated to help. We are very much motivated to implement prevention programs in our schools and communities. We have a very good heart, but it's not enough. We need to do it the right way. So last year, we have introduced evidence-based interventions and policies. And I hope that you still remember those that are linked to positive outcomes, like use of positive messaging instead of using scare tactics or fear arousal strategies. We said that it is also ineffective to invite former drug users to give testimonials. They don't work in prevention because they just send mixed messages. If our goal is to prevent, okay, our young people from starting, okay, the use of these substances, we need to give them a clear message: abstinence, okay, not to start. If they already started, then we need to prevent the progression to substance use disorder. So again, fellow educators, let us keep in mind, okay, that our role is really to be a good role model and to develop the necessary knowledge, skills, and values of our learners. It is not our responsibility to solve substance use. I have here the root cause analysis, okay, of substance use. So if you're going to look at this problem 3, at the center, we have the core problem. And of course, we have their substance use. So just to review, when we say substance use, this is the use of tobacco, alcohol, illicit or illegal drugs, misuse of prescription medications, and inhalants. So it's actually a general term that encompasses the use of all these psychoactive substances. So we have there the core issue. And then the branches and the leaves would be the consequences. So we have the personal, family, and societal costs of substance use. For personal, of course, we have the different diseases and disorders. For family, we may have marital conflict, child abuse. For societal cost, of course, loss of productivity, crime, okay? Those are the different consequences of substance use. And then we can see here the root causes. So what are the reasons why people use substances? And I have categorized them into 2. So we have the personal factors and the environmental factors. And for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to zero in on poor literacy skills. But you also need to remember that included under the personal factors is genetics. Based on current research, there is a 40 to 60% predisposition, genetic predisposition for substance use. So it's actually genetically linked. So after the personal factors, another very important factor is the environment. And again, when we talk about the environment, of course, we have the micro level and the macro level environment. So under the micro level environment, we have the family, the school, the workplace, and then the macro level environment, of course, we have the socio-economic environment, the political environment, the greater physical environment. And under that, I have limited, okay, the environmental factors to lack of role models, okay, so poor socialization and negative peer influence. So I would like to emphasize that peer influence can actually be positive. So our task as responsible adults is to guide our young people in transforming negative peer influence into something positive. So they are very powerful agents of change. So instead of negatively influencing their peers, why not become positive peer influence? So now we're going to move on to the main topic for this afternoon. So I have embedded preventive drug education into the literacy framework. And when I talk about literacy, I'm referring to three types of literacy. The first one is drug literacy. We're also going to look into media literacy, particularly in deconstructing this alcohol advertisements, and meta literacy. So thinking about thinking. Do you do that? Do you do reflective thinking? So that is part of meta literacy. And I'm going to explain that to you in more detail in a while. So let's start with the first one. This is drug literacy. And what is drug literacy? It's actually our ability to obtain, understand, and use information to guide drug-related decisions. So this is a set of skills. So we know where to get drug-related information. When we have the data, we are able to understand, we're able to interpret it correctly, and we are able to utilize this accurate information in making responsible decisions. So how do we develop drug literate learners? There are different ways to do this. You can actually use the constructivist approach wherein you just provide a stimulating environment so that you can guide the learners when they ask questions, okay? You open the floor to dialogue, okay, and continued conversation. That is one way to do that. Another way is to guide the students in choosing information that comes from reliable sources. So when we talk about drug-related data, globally, of course, we need to check the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So this is the most reliable source of information for drugs, okay, in the global scale. Of course, in the Philippines, we have the Dangerous Drugs Board. So it is the highest body, it is our policy-making body when it comes to drug prevention and control. So let me give you an example. We have this drug data from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime based on the World Drug Report 2020, because the 2021 issue would be released on during the Itadae, June 26. Okay, so according to the World Drug Report 2020, there were about 269 million people worldwide aged 16 to 64 years who used drugs at least once in 2018. You may notice that this was actually delayed by 2 years. So World Drug Report 2020, but the data was collected in 2018. Because it's very hard to consolidate data across countries. That's why it's usually delayed by 2 years. So the World Drug Report for 2021 would share the data from 2019. I hope you understand that. So 269 million people use drugs at least once in 2018. Okay, that is the global context. How many billion people do we have right now in the world? The global population, so let's say 7.8 billion. Out of the 7.8 billion, we have 269 million users. Okay, please take note of that. Now let's move on to the national context. So in the Philippines, 1.67 million people aged 10 to 69 years are currently drug users. This is from the 2019 data from the Dangerous Drugs Board. So they did a national survey. And if we are going to look at this information, okay, how many Filipinos at the moment? What is our population? 111 million. For 2021, 111 million. Let's just assume that in 2019, we are 109 million Filipinos. Out of the 109 million, we have 1.67 million users. What is the main point of the slide? So I have here in screaming text, the fact is we have a drug-free majority. The majority are non-users. This is a very important message that we need to actually disseminate to our young people because they have this notion that everyone is using drugs. everyone is smoking or drinking alcohol. That is simply not true. The truth is the norm is non-use. Please take note of this. Drug-free majority. Okay. Another indicator that a person is drug literate is his or her ability to interpret data. So let's look at this line graph. You can see here, this is the data from the Monitoring the Future. It is a nationwide survey since 1975. It's actually being conducted by the University of Michigan in the United States. And we are seeing data from 1991 to 2015. And this is the estimated percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students smoking cigarettes in the past 30 days. So a month before the survey, this is actually the data when it comes to smoking cigarettes. So you can see the different colors. The blue indicates, okay, it is for grade 12, the orange is for grade 10, and the red is for grade 8. And based on the pattern, you can see that there is an increase in smoking cigarettes during the mid-90s. So you can see the peak here, 1996. There is a peak. So if you're going to interpret this data, what is the context? Why was there an increase in smoking cigarettes? If you remember, in the context of the United States during this time, the tobacco companies have been very aggressive in advertising cigarettes targeting young people. So I guess that is the reason. Okay? Very aggressive advertisements from tobacco companies. But as you can see, after the peak, there is now a decreasing trend, and it continues to decrease until 2015. So what could be the possible reason of this decreasing trend? Well, the positive point is that prevention is working. So because of counter advertising, because of the increase in prices of cigarettes, smoking bans, so having these tobacco policies in place, that these are actually the reasons why there is a decreasing trend in cigarette smoking. And I guess we can learn so much from this data. In the Philippines, we have the syntax, and you need to remember the syntax is an example of an evidence-based policy. It works. Okay, let us go back to the brain development. Why is it very risky for young people to take psychoactive substances? Well, let's review the brain development. So the process happens from back to front, okay? And you need to remember that the teen brain is still under construction, is still developing. So if the development happens from back to front, we can see that the physical coordination, the part of the brain that regulates emotion, which is the amygdala, the motivation, this actually develops earlier than the prefrontal cortex. And according to studies, the prefrontal cortex continues to develop until age 25. And what is the importance of the prefrontal cortex? The prefrontal cortex is the seat of our reasoning and judgment. So the higher cognitive skills are being lodged in the prefrontal cortex. What is the main point of this slide? Our young people usually make decisions based on their emotions and not based on their judgment and reasoning. So our role as prevention advocates and responsible adults, our role is to guide our young people in making responsible decisions, because the part of the brain that is in charge of decision making is not yet fully developed. So please, I'm appealing to everyone let us not solely blame our young people when they commit mistakes, when they make irresponsible decisions, because at the moment their brain is still developing. Okay, here you can see pond frogs. Okay, frogs in the pond. And what's the reason for this image? I would like to explain to you, okay, the health promotion perspective in actually looking at the substance use issue. My mother is a biology teacher, although she is now a retired teacher. And I remember her teaching about ecosystem, okay, the different relationships among organisms in the ecosystem. And here I would like to relate that with substance use. When we look at substance use, we can also use the social ecological model. We need to look at the whole system. So for instance, we have here 4 frogs in the pond, right? When, for example, we observe something strange, a strange behavior in one of the frogs, okay, the one jumping, what do we do? Do we kill the frog? Of course not, right? What we do is to further investigate what is happening inside the pond. Maybe there is something wrong with the water, or maybe with the soil, or maybe there is something wrong with the other frogs. Do you see the point? So, in actually trying to understand substance use, we need to look at the whole picture. We need to look at the whole system. So, I have explained to you the interaction between the personal and the environmental factors. So, it's actually a very complex issue. We can say that, oh, that person is using substances because he or she is morally weak. That is not the way to explain the dynamics of substance use. It's actually an interaction among the different factors. So I hope that you understand, okay, the reason of this image. Bio and social ecological perspective in understanding substance use. You need to look at the whole picture. What is happening in the ecosystem that's affecting these organisms? Another diagram that is very important, okay, actually shows the interaction between biology and the social and physical environments. I have told you that biology, when it comes to substance use, accounts for about 40 to 60%. Okay, social and physical environment, of course, we have it's actually the micro and the macro level environment, and together they provide opportunities and constraints that impact human behavior along the life course. Last time, I have emphasized that our young people experience crises. Okay, they are highly vulnerable whenever there is a major transition in their lives. So we need to be very cautious. For parents and teachers like us, let us be more attentive, especially when our learners are transitioning. So from elementary to junior high school, that is a major transition. From junior high school to senior high school, from senior high school to college or to work, that is another major transition. And whenever, okay, people undergo these major transitions, we become highly vulnerable to risk-taking behaviors. So that is the main point, why we need to look into the life course. Another indicator that a person is drug literate is the ability to implement strategies that would protect health and well-being. So I have here the different protective factors. Of course, personally, if you have a positive temperament, if you are intellectually curious, you're intellectually stimulated, you have that intellectual ability, you have a positive and supportive family environment, you have a very strong social support system, you have a caring relationship with at least one adult, and you are in school or you have work. That these are actually the protective factors. And in prevention, we need to strengthen these protective factors while minimizing the impact of risk factors. I have here two practical tips. Be an upstander. What is an upstander? We're used to hearing the word bystander. So bystander is somebody who is passive. Whenever you witness a situation, okay, a sensitive issue, for instance, you don't do anything. You're just a bystander. But if you're an upstander, you are assertive. You make a stand. So I guess it is very important for us to teach our young people and encourage them to be an upstander, not a bystander. So we need to fight for our rights, okay? Our right to health and wellness. We need to bring to the fore whenever there are issues related to substances, because it is our collective responsibility to make our nation drug-free. What about abstinence box? I have an abstinence box. The abstinence box contains at least 5 items that would help you say no to risk-taking behaviors such as substance use. So maybe you can have your own abstinence box. So I highly encourage you to have one. Maybe you can also encourage your learners, okay, to have an abstinence box or bag. So what's the content of so here is my abstinence box. I'm going to show you the contents. I have here a notebook. So this notebook, because I love to write, so whenever I feel bored or I feel depressed, I just need to scribble some notes. I am a Catholic, so I have here a rosary, so a spiritual symbol that would protect me. So faith is a very important protective factor. And then I have here a quotation. It is never too late to be what you might have been. Another item is a keychain, because this reminds me of the good times. I'd like to travel, so I would like to go back to Zamboanga where I got this keychain. And then I have here the picture of my husband. Okay, maybe you can also put a picture of your family and your loved ones. So I highly encourage you to have an abstinence box. This would help you, okay, stay away from unhealthy behaviors. So this is my secret tool. Okay. So at this point, may I request you to stand, okay, for a very quick activity. Okay, I'm going to do some stretching exercises. It's just push up, okay, as high as you can, okay, because you've been sitting for a while. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. To the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And to your left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We are going to shake. Our fingers, come on, shake, shake, shake. And this time, I'm going to challenge you. Point your index finger, 2 index fingers. And now we're going to draw, okay, a circle together. Circle, circle, circle. This time we're going to draw a triangle together. Triangle, triangle, okay, triangle. And this time we're going to do a star. Let's do a star together. Let's do a star. Okay, the last challenge would be, can you do this simultaneously? The right index finger is going to draw a star, while the left index finger is going to draw a triangle. Okay, let's do this together. So triangle and star. 1, 2, 3, go. Triangle and star, triangle. Okay, it's actually difficult to do. Thank you so much, everyone. You can now take your seats and we will continue with the presentation. Okay. If you are a drug literate person, you will also understand that there is a limitation when it comes to binary constructs like good or bad. What is the problem with this? When it comes to drugs, drugs are neither good or bad. Or we can say drugs are both good and bad. Why? Because you need to remember that medicines are drugs. Okay? So when we use drugs to cure our diseases, okay? When we use drugs for therapeutic purpose, then drugs are good. But when we use drugs for other reasons, okay, when we abuse it, then in that particular context, drugs become bad. So drugs are neither good or bad. They're actually neutral and it depends in the context. So you need to remember that more drugs equals more risk. Younger age equals more risk. Remember the developing brain. Places, time, and activities influence risk. So, for example, it is different when you are drinking alcohol with your friends and when you are drinking alcohol alone. That would influence your risk level. And the reasons for using substances are important. Are you using it to be happy? Are you using it to escape from your problems? Are you using it because of its therapeutic value? So the reasons are important. Now we move on to the second, media literacy. So this is now the second literacy. And when we talk about media literacy, this is the ability to critically analyze for accuracy, credibility, or evidence of bias the content created and consumed in various media. We are big consumers of media, right? Especially social media. So it's really very important for us to be able to differentiate the positive and the negative influence of media in our lives, particularly in the context of substance use. So here we have a cartoon and it says, now kids, don't look until you are 21. As if we can forbid our young people from looking. So let me just remind you that in media literacy, we're not actually telling our young people to close their eyes. Okay, to turn off the television whenever there is a scene where there are people drinking alcohol or smoking. We don't do that. Okay, what we do in media literacy is to develop the skills of our young people so that they will be critical minded, so that they will begin to ask the right questions. In that way, they will be active, okay, in processing the experience instead of just being passive. So you don't just accept the things that you see, the things that you hear, you need to question them. Are they accurate? Are they valid? What is the source of the information? What is the reputation of the source? It is actually sad that many of our advertisements, images from movies, okay, from television commercials, when we talk about alcohol, the message that they are sending is that alcohol is harmless. It is totally okay to drink. It is something that society tolerates. It is something to do so that you will be accepted and you will have more friends. But again, let's go back to the norm. The norm is non-use. The majority are non-drinkers. So let's differentiate the myth from the fact. So the myth is that alcohol is a great stress reliever and it isn't as harmful as hard drugs. That is totally false because we all know that alcohol is a depressant drug. It puts the body under stress. So if you are depressed, the more that you shouldn't drink alcohol. Remember, alcohol makes you depressed. Okay? And it puts you at higher risk for diseases, especially diseases of the liver. So now I'm going to move on to the most important part, okay, of media literacy. We're going to make use of the strategies in media literacy to deconstruct an alcohol advertisement. So there are 4 steps that we need to remember. So whenever there is an alcohol advertisement, you see a billboard, you hear and watch a commercial, okay, on alcohol. The first thing that you need to do is to make observations. So observe, what are the images and colors that are used? Remember, there is color psychology, right? So it means something. So the use of the different colors, the use of animations and images, even the lighting, the angle of the camera, there is a meaning behind that. So you need to ask these questions. What effects do they have on the advertisement? So if there are animations, there are sexy images, what effects do they have on the advertisement? The second is determine the purpose of the ad. Who is the target audience? Is it like somewhat talking to you? Who is the target audience? Young people, male, female, both? Who? What emotions does the advertisement attach to the product? So what do you feel when you see this billboard or you watch this commercial? Do you feel happy? Okay. Determine the assumptions the ad makes and the messages it sends. What kinds of assumptions does the ad makes about drinking? So is it assuming that drinking alcohol is actually safe? Is it saying that sports and alcohol can go together? Is it assuming that you will feel that you belong to your group when you drink alcohol? And you need to ask this very important question. Are these assumptions true? And lastly, you need to consider the possible consequences of these messages. Is this advertisement socially responsible? Or there are a lot of ugly information that the advertisement is not saying? So remember, ask these questions. What is the hidden message? What is the advertisement trying to conceal? And why is that so? So let us analyze the different alcohol propaganda techniques that are being used. Of course, in the Philippines, we have the most popular beer, San Miguel beer. So I have here the images, okay? And the slogan, look good, feel good, meet more. I have limited, okay, the propaganda techniques because of the time constraint. So we're going to look um, uh, for 4 techniques that are being used. The first one is what we call the bandwagon technique. The bandwagon technique is the message is that everyone is doing it and you are the only person not doing it. So better join the bandwagon. So, okay, as you can see from this image, it is actually trying to depict, okay, the friendship among these people. They are sharing good times, okay, together. And if you see this, okay, the message is that drinking San Miguel beer is actually fun. It makes you have friends, okay, and you are the only one not drinking alcohol. So better drink and join the fun. So remember, bandwagon is a popular propaganda technique being used in a lot of products, okay? And in this particular context, we're seeing it in the context of alcohol. The second technique is testimonial. Again, this is very common. This is the use of popular people or celebrity, okay, to endorse the product. So the point here is for you to be able to transfer the traits of the celebrity to the product. So, for example, you love Coco Martin. So, because you love him, that particular feeling would be translated to the product. That would be transferred to the product. Okay, so you may also have this notion that when you drink Emperador, you will be as good looking and as popular as Coco Martin. So the use of testimonial is a common propaganda technique. The third one is glittering generalities. Here, you associate the product with a generalized value. So I have here an example, Smirnoff, and it says, change the way you are perceived by others. So the generalized value here is the value that we are putting on self-esteem and our reputation, the way we project ourselves to other people. And the commercial or the advertisement is saying that when you drink this particular alcoholic drink, you will have this, okay, upgraded self-image that you can project to other people so that you will have good reputation. The last one would be transfer. And this propaganda technique is transforming the product into something else. So here you have the absolute vodka and you have a halo. So the halo here is actually a symbol for goodness or being holy. So in a way, this advertisement is transferring, okay, that holy trait to the product. So it's just like saying when you drink this vodka, you are going to be a good or a holy person. But okay, in prevention, we can do counter advertising. We can counteract all these images, okay, from these advertisements. Of course, the reason why they're doing that is to sell the product. So how do we counter that? The adbusters have very good examples, and this is one of them. So if you can see here, we have the absolute vodka. Okay, this is the original advertisement. The adbusters developed this counter advertisement. So in the context of the negative consequence of drinking alcohol, which is death. So that's why it's absolute N. So what messages are aimed at you? So whenever you are faced with billboards, you are watching commercials or reading advertisements, try to ask the question, what are these messages that are being aimed at different target populations? So if you are a young person, the message that is actually being sent to you includes independence, social acceptance, coolness. Okay? Because this resonates with young people. If you are a female, the message of these advertisements would include being attractive, being thin, sophistication, a way of escaping your problems, giving you pleasure, freedom, independence, romance, and relationships. And if you are a male, well, the message could be related to sexual conquest, success, and sophistication. So again, we are doing this deconstructing advertisement activity so that we will be able to regain that power. Okay? We will not be manipulated by these advertisements. Remember, these advertisements aim to sell the product. So what they do is to appeal to our emotions and shut off our thinking skills. Let us not allow that to happen. Ask these questions. So whenever you see an advertisement, ask, okay, what are the images? What's the hidden message? What is this trying to tell me? What are the propaganda techniques being used so that I will buy the product? Okay? Now let's move on to the last. This is the last part of the presentation. Let's talk about meta-literacy. And meta-literacy is actually a new concept. It's a very novel concept. And it came from Mackey and Jacobson in 2011. This is the ability to reflect critically and support the collaborative creation and exchange of information in the digital age. So the main focus of meta-literacy is reflective thinking, being critical about what you see in the digital platform. So this is mainly focusing on the digital platform. And this is actually encouraging us to create, okay, not only to be recipients of materials and information, but to create and disseminate this information using the digital platform. So how do we develop meta-literacy? Well, one of the things that we can do is to learn to reflect on how we process information based on our feelings or beliefs. So whenever you read for instance, an information online, check your feelings. Am I being agitated? Am I mad or angry because of this? Is this evoking positive emotions in me? You need to ask these questions. What is my belief regarding this? Do I agree or disagree? Okay. Let me give you an example. Okay. In March 2020, the St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, okay, there was this information which circulated on social media, particularly Facebook. And it says that after extensive research, our findings show that consuming alcoholic beverages may help reduce the risk of infection by the novel coronavirus COVID-19. This is St. Luke's Hospital, Kansas City in the United States, not in the Philippines. Okay, this was from the US. This circulated online. And I'm going to ask you, if you've read this particular information, are you going to believe it? So you need to check, okay, am I being agitated? Actually, when I read this, I was actually agitated and I strongly disagree because I know that alcoholic drinks, okay, are depressants and they don't have any use when it comes to treating coronavirus, okay, treating COVID. We all know that COVID is still, there are a lot of information that we still need to know about COVID-19. So basically, this is a false, okay, information. Alcoholic drinks do not reduce coronavirus risk. And the St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City and the World Health Organization actually debunked this. They gave an official statement, the hospital gave an official statement saying that this is a false statement and it did not come from the hospital. So before I leave, I would like to share with you some of the infographics or the IEC materials, the information, education, and communication materials that my students develop. So you need to remember that part of being meta-literate is to be able to create your own materials and share this and be responsible in sharing. Meaning, you need to ensure that what you are sharing online is totally fair and accurate. So, 5 of my students did, okay, this materials, okay. So, Norms shared healthy tips to prevent substance use. Princess or Adet shared 9 peer pressure refusal skills. John Roland or Jaro shared preventing tips for effective communication about drugs. Jabi or Juan Albert talked about the importance of mental health, and this is actually very much relevant. This resonates well with young people, okay? Using the smartphone and then having these important messages like mental health matters. And of course, there's a very big link between substance use and mental health. And this is actually one of my favorites. Vina did a map to a healthy and drug-free world. And this is actually very interactive. You can see here 3 faces. Actually, these are the pictures of Vina. And her instruction is put your favorite Vina picture, okay, into one of the tips. So you can see here the different tips of living a healthy and drug-free life, like eating a good diet or a nutritious meal, yoga, physical activity, stress management techniques. So if you are going to commit to that particular step or activity, then you need to put any of the Vina faces. So it's quite interactive. And these are actually very popular infographics. They were able to share this online and they've got very positive feedback from their friends. Okay. So I guess this is actually doable. Yeah. Even in our junior and senior high school learners, they can do a lot of these materials that can be shared online to spread awareness on the consequences of substance use and how to protect themselves so that they will be able to live a healthy and drug-free life. So let me end by saying that there is too much strength, okay, in being together. So we need to harness the power of connection. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much din po, Prof. Grace Pante, for this very enlightening lecture. As always, katulad po nung last webinar series, you sandwiched our last webinar series. You always have this new information that kind of parang surprises us na, wow, may ganun palang bagong information. And you have a way of introducing this information na hindi kami masyadong nasa-shock. Pero these are new things that we are learning. And maganda po yung sinasabi nyo, Prof. Grace, na hindi lang intention, hindi lang good heart that you help, but you really need to be knowledgeable about what you're doing, that you're not causing harm instead of really helping. Prof. Grace, there's this point nyo po kanina na importante, literate yung ating mga learners. Pero at the same time, we acknowledge na limited din yung kaya nilang i-comprehend because of the brain setup that they have. How do we reconcile this, like, let's say, our efforts to educate our learners and at the same time, the limitation of their capacity, or given their brain setup, to understand the risks of the behaviors that they may be tempted to do?
Thank you so much, Gian, for that question. That is actually very relevant. So I guess the most important thing is to start where the learner is. So assess the needs of the learner, and based on the results of your assessment, then you can do your intervention. So we need to remember that each one of us is unique. And you are correct, because we are in the midst of a pandemic. We're also under different circumstances. And it's really very important to consider all these limitations. And model, don't forget to model being critical minded. So the guidance of the responsible adult, whether the parent or the teacher, that is actually very crucial, especially now that we are doing remote learning. So be critical minded.
Yeah, actually, yun na, related na rin po, no? Opo. Prof. Grace, meron na po tayong question, and bago ko po palabasahin yung question, Irmi, no, remind lang natin yung ating mga participants to type in their questions sa link na inilagay natin sa ating screen kanina. And I think it will be shown again ngayon sa bottom of our screen. You can type your question there. Prof. Grace, susugan ko lang po yung sinabi ninyo because there's already a question here from one of our teachers in Southville Senior High School, Rodriguez, Rizal. Katulad po ng sinabi nyo, kailangan merong isang responsible adult, at least one responsible adult. Can you give like specific activities po that you would like to suggest? Yung question po ng ating teacher is, during this pandemic, how can we help our students divert their attention from, let's say, engaging in drinking alcohol, especially that they are not allowed to go out and socialize with their classmates?
Gian, the question is about strategies that can be used in alcohol prevention education. Am I right?
Especially during this pandemic daw po kasi, or hindi naman daw po nakakalabas yung mga learners and they're confined in their homes. And kung kailangan ng socialization, what do you suggest are effective ways to prevent them from using alcohol or other drugs?
I love that question. That is very important, especially now. So there are a lot of activities that can be done in the families. You can do physical activity together. Why not do a yoga session together, cooking? So a lot of interest that can be nurtured, okay? Like playing musical instruments. You can do video okay together. And you can also do some role-playing activities. So for instance, the parents or the guardian would role-play with the teens. What do you do whenever there's someone who will offer you a cigarette or an alcohol? And you can have these scripts. The role-playing activities are actually very effective in developing life skills, especially decision-making and refusal, how to say no. And of course, Gian, faith-based activities. It's very relevant in the context of the Philippines. Praying the rosary together if you're Catholics. Okay, so spiritual activities, there are a lot of healthy alternatives. So instead of using substances, a lot of activities can be done. Healthful activities. Gardening.
Ako naman, Sir Gian, ma-share ko lang na ang dami ko rin nakuwang tips from Professor Grace. Particularly dun sa isa ko sa nagustuhan sa topic ni Prof is yung sa drug prevention education natin sa media literacy. So maganda nga yung nagkakaroon tayo ng ganito mga webinars para bang nare-remind tayo talaga na there is need to invest ba sa mga development ng mga educational interventions to empower yung ating mga young ones kasi na magkaroon ng increased knowledge kasi sila mas vulnerable po and madaling ang mas way, as sabi nga ni Professor and explain niya kanina, sa ganito mga tactics ng mga big companies sa advertisement ng kanilang mga alcohol, tabako. So, ayun, nakakatuwa po na nanaulit ni Professor.
Prof. Grace, would you encourage our teachers to do what you did during this webinar? Like, ipagawa nilang assignment? Like,
yes,
gawa sila ng essay
yes,
or mag-review sila ng advertisement? Or do we unnecessarily expose them ba do sa advertisement? Or dapat may specific instruction?
You should actually guide your students in doing these activities. A very helpful activity would be the counter advertisement. So challenge your students. How are you going to counter these messages from alcohol companies? So counter advertisement. Make a counter advertisement.
Mga anong grade level po appropriate yung gantong assignment, Doc? Maybe for tobacco products din, no? Not just alcohol.
Yeah. I think junior and senior high school, yeah, that could be done. And the abstinence box even for young learners. For instance, young learners, what are the items that they can put inside the box so that they will be protected from unhealthy behavior? So maybe they can put their crayons so that instead of engaging in unhealthy behavior, they can just draw or do some crafts, right? So even young learners can benefit from the abstinence box activity.
One of the things that I got from you, Prof. Grace, is that we normalize the conversation about this thing. Na instead na maging taboo siya or sa ubaya na lang sa ibang tao na lang yung mag-discuss, ikaw as the adult, concerned adult nung learner, you really talk about these things as plainly as you can, no? And sometimes nakakatakot yun akala natin lalong mapupush yung person into drug use. But you're saying is drug literacy actually involves an honest talk, honest conversation about these things.
Exactly,
Prof. Grace,
Gian.
isa rin po.
You are correct.
Isa rin po dun sa parang parang yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na surprising ko pong narinig kanina is yung hindi binary yung pagtingin sa mga bagay-bagay. As Ndep coordinators, as BKD coordinators, how does that affect our messaging? Kasi we say anti-drugs, for example. But you're saying na hindi binary. What does that mean po, ma'am, Prof. Grace?
Gian, thank you so much for that question. That gives you an opportunity to clarify. Okay, when we talk about substance use, it's actually a spectrum. So it's a continuum. And we need to understand the fact that there is also what we call beneficial use. That is actually the first part. So for instance, you drink coffee because it benefits you, right? It makes you awake. And there is no negative consequence at the beginning. And you also need to remember that people have different risks. Okay, it's actually very complex. So we have different reactions to these substances. So there is beneficial use, and then through continued use, then you can progress to dependence, and that would be the opposite of the spectrum. So it's actually a continuum, and we need to also accept the fact that people use substances for many reasons. That's why in the context of drugs, for instance, I explained that medicines are drugs. That's why we need to be very clear about this. When you use drugs because of their therapeutic value, you are sick, okay, and you need to be treated. That's why you are taking these medications under the advice of your doctor. Then that is good use. But if you are using substances beyond that, okay, for other reasons other than medical, then that could be termed as bad use. So there is already misuse or abuse.
Problematic. Opo.
Yes.
So Prof. Grace, kung kausap yung mga learners, kasi minsan pagkabataan nga naman talaga yung kausap mo, gets naman nila kapag yung parang basta mo lang sila binabawalan o kaya sinasabi mo lang na, basta wag na lang. So you're encouraging na parang maging ganito rin tayo ka-transparent in conversing with our young people na hindi lang natin sasabihin na sige, basta wag kang gumamit kasi yun yung basta kasi masama o kasi basta concerned lang ako sa'yo. But you will go to the extent of educating them about the continuum, about these things. And that's okay, ano po? Parang that's part of the literacy that we're promoting.
Yeah. Gian, if you are going to use the constructivist approach, okay, and that is being neutral about things, that is the way to go. And I guess I've explained it that way because the target audience of this webinar are actually teachers and Ndep coordinators. But I also would like to explain further that when you are talking to our young people, okay, please emphasize the negative consequences. Okay, negative consequences, because we would like to discourage them from using, right? So even though we accept the fact that using substances, okay, in the context of course, medical context that can be therapeutic or beneficial, that's true. But there are a lot of the negative consequences outweigh, okay, the benefits if it's not in the context of medical use. So again, let me just emphasize, if we're talking to young people, focus on the negative consequences and how to protect them so that they will be able to have a healthy and drug-free life.
Ayan. So kumbaga parang that's part of the literacy pa rin talaga po siya, no? Na hindi lang natin sila binabawalan pero ine-explain natin sa kanila there are these consequences if you choose this path, this is what happens. And then they anyone who understands the situation pa rin naman po talaga will really prefer na kung ano yung beneficial sa kanya and will not go the path na alam niya destructive para sa kanya. So thank you po for that clarification, Prof. Grace. So for our first, yes po, Prof.
Gian, last point, we go beyond knowledge. The most important thing in prevention is we go beyond knowledge and facts. We use this knowledge and facts as foundation, but our aim really is to develop the values, pro-social attitudes, and the life skills of our learners and young people. So I'm going to end there. Thank you so much, Gian and Miss Urbina.
Maraming salamat po, Prof. Grace. So ang galing na itong literacy na to, Irmi, no? That's the beginning, literacy. Pero ang importante pa rin how we apply what we know. So yung mas practical na side, no? Kasi nga, ang exciting lang kasi we are Ndep coordinators and we are designing programs for our young people, educating them. And sometimes we may be fixated sa simply prohibiting things. Pero ang natutunan natin ngayon, yung tatlong iba-ibang uri ng literacy, drug literacy, media literacy, and then meta literacy, na yung nagle-level up more than just stopping young people. It's really educating them and giving them the skills na necessary, even to the point of role playing. So sinabi kanina ni Prof. Grace, no, that we can role play. But again, ultimately, focus pa rin tayo sa health, promotion ng health ng ating learners. Babalik pa rin tayo dun sa itinataguyod natin sa okay sa DepEd. Ayan. Can you read some responses lang ng ating mga participants, Irmi? Sabi dito ng isa nating teacher, the speaker is prepared and did a great discussion. Sabi ng isa pa nating teacher, thank you very much, Ma'am Grace, for the lecture. I'm grateful that I learned new things as Ndep coordinator that I can apply in my teaching. Sobrang dami talaga nating mga teachers din kasi nanonood ngayon, mga school level coordinators. And kung magawa lang nila yung mga examples, no, na pinakita sa atin ni Prof. Grace, that will be really helpful. Maganda rin yung sabi dito ng isa nating teacher from hindi nakalagay kung saan siya galing, but I agree with Prof. Grace that the family has is the first and foremost place that holds the activities of children. So they are the ones who are responsible for the behavior of their children and who should be the first one to educate their children about drugs. And meron ka pa bang ibang mga nakitang mga comments from our participants, Irmi?
Okay, sir. Dito sa ating Facebook Live kasi, sir, puro mostly yan nga po. Nagalingan po sila talaga sa napaka-rich and talagang empowering na presentation po ni Professor Grace dito sa ating FB. So, thank you so much daw po. And ayun, very informative lecture. Kung saan daw po sila makakakuha ng copy, very informative topic. Yun, all positive comments, sir, for the presentation po of Professor Grace.
And that's a very good start for the first episode ng ating Ndep webinar series this 2021. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga nag-participate. So again, let's just emphasize, no, we do not end with literacy. Literacy is just the foundation. At the end of the day, paano ba gagamitin ng ating learners yung mga tinuturo natin sa kanila? And Irmi, siguro sagutin lang natin yung mga common question about about certificates and about a piece of the presentation. It's a recurring question.
Actually, sir, hindi po. So, yan ang ating mga reminders sa ating mga dear participants. So, ang ating pong registration po, as mentioned po sa ating OUA memo, is at http://bit.ly po, Ndep Webinar Series Part 2, using the enrollment key Ndep WSP2. So, yun lang po yung ating gagamitin na enrollment key, yung binigay po namin sa memo. Wala na pong iba. Unlike po last year yata po is need nyo pong mag-register before getting the enrollment key. So ngayon talagang pinasimplify na lang po since yun nga po yung laging questions na po last year. So yun po, reminder natin na registration po is once lang for the entire series. So for the next episode po, for next month, you don't need to register again po for our webinar. So presentations po of the resource speakers may also be accessed through the PDLMS after the webinars. Actually, ito pong PDLMS natin, sa mga wala pong account is simply gumawa lang po tayo. And once nakalagin na po tayo, doon po natin makikita actually lahat na po ng information na nabanggit natin sa ating OUA memo. Specifically yung ating feedback form for the generation of certificates later and yung registration po. Yun po. Pati rin po yung ating link for the presentation po of the resource person is doon din po siya makikita sa ating PDLMS. So ito namang ating frequently asked and answered fact nga po, how do we get the certificates? So yun nga po, once again, certificates are generated through the DepEd PDLMS. Upon registration, participants are provided with an enrollment key which they can use to access the Ndep webinar series course in the system. So registered participants must accomplish the evaluation form po using the link na provided po natin na ibibigay din po natin dyan sa ating live FB comment section later to get a certificate of attendance for the session. So after po nitong ating itong session is huwag niyo pong kalimutan na mag-fill out nitong ating evaluation form para po makakuha kayo ng inyong certificate para sa session na ito.
Ayan, so yung feedback form na yan din yung ginamit natin kanina for our participants to raise questions. But this time, we just want you to answer the fields on the feedback on how we can improve our next sessions, and kung meron din kayong questions or any other concerns related to the Ndep webinar series. Just explore the PDLMS. May mga i-check po kayo. Basahin lang po natin ng mabuti yung mga instructions doon po sa ating website, doon sa ating training platform. Most of the information na kailangan po natin ay nilagay na po natin doon kung hindi man natin siya nailagay doon sa ating OUA memo for this activity. Ayan. So, Irmi, alam mo ba, marami tayong mga bago kasi na ginawa for this Ndep webinar series. Bagong time slot, 2 o'clock na tayo. Bagong approach into hosting. Dalawa na tayo ngayon na nagkwentuhan sa ating mga participants. Yung isa pang bago is papasyal na tayo sa buong Pilipinas. Hindi naman po ang Pilipinas. We have 4 episodes left and magbi-virtual tour po tayo sa Philippines. That's another new thing na gagawin natin dito sa Ndep webinar series by asking our regions to host the next episodes. So Irmi, let's welcome now para officially i-turn over natin from NCR here in Pasig City. We will be going to saan ba yung ating next episode?
Sa Region 5, sir, ang ating sorry sir, medyo choppy. Hindi ko na yata narinig. Ating mga host.
Sa Region 5.
Region 5, yes po. Si Sir Marlo Bobier, ang ating Ndep coordinator ng Legazpi City. If you can open your camera, sir, para officially na tayong makita ng ating mga participants. And si Ma'am Emeline Francia Abrasaldo, ang ating Ndep coordinator ng Catanduanes. Welcome po.
Hi, Ma'am Emeline.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Ayan, si Sir Marlo po ba? Kasama na po natin. Hi, sir. Kayo na po ang susunod nating host para sa ating Ndep webinar series. So, we are excited po para sa ating next episode. Tingnan natin yung mga next episodes natin na inaabangan natin. Yan. Kumusta naman yung first episode natin, sir? And ma'am?
Na-pressure kami, sir.
We're excited We're excited po na i-host ninyo yung ating next topic. Magaganda pa rin yung mga next topics natin. Tingnan lang po natin sa screen, no? Yung mga susunod na aabangan ng ating mga participants. Kami po ni Irmi will be very glad to officially turn over na po sa inyong dalawa para ituloy naman yung pag-host. And then in the next episode, I understand it will be another region naman na mag-host. So ano ba yung mga next topics natin in the next few weeks? Can we show them sa screen? Para makita rin natin kung ano yung i-host sa atin ng Region 5.
Sir Gian, may dagdag ko lang. Maganda rin pala itong bagong ating technique, no, na nakakaroon tayo ng other host para malay mo na unleash pala natin yung kanilang mga hidden talents ba, sir, no? Hindi pala natin alam before.
Tama. And of course, marami kasi katulad ng sabi ni Sir Earl, no, all voices matter. Marami tayong champions from the field na hindi lang passively watching, hindi lang bystanders ang term nga ni Prof. Face. Upstanders. So, lahat tayo mas maraming involvement, mas pwede tayong, mas malakas yung voice natin in our advocacy. There is a slide natin. Pakita lang natin yung mga topics na abangan natin as we end this session din. And as we thank then later yung mga participants, ay yung mga involved behind the scenes. Ayan. So, for the next Yan. So, i-take note na po natin itong mga dates na to, no, para sa ating mga viewers. Abangan po natin ang ating July 22, August 26, September 23, at saka October 28. Yan po yung mga dates na tatandaan natin para manood tayo ng Ndep webinar series na ito. And ano ba yung mga titles na ina-expect natin?
Ayan, sir. For next month, we have Ma'am Mary Grace A. Gomez, and she will discuss psychological support for student at risk of substance abuse. So for August 26 naman, we have Maria Cecil Zamora, and she's going to discuss the Going the Distance, online delivery of drug education. For September 23, ang ating topic po is the implementation cycle of prevention intervention ni Pastor LJ Espeleta po ng ating UTC Global Trainer. And for October 28, we have Sir Santander Tednares Iray, and he will discuss the importance of life skills in drug prevention.
Yan, ang gagandang topics, no? Talagang yung topic natin kanina is just an introduction, simula pa lang. But these are parang mas level up na topics na magagamit natin. So allow us to thank all the people behind the scenes ng ating webinar series ngayon. On behalf of the Bureau of Learner Support Services, School Health Division, we would like to thank ang ating mga partners who made this webinar series possible for a second time around. The Dangerous Drugs Board, the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education, ng mga resource persons natin for this series, the Information and Communications Technology Service, Public Affairs Service, Youth Formation Division, who have been very helpful in disseminating information about this activity, our DepEd regional offices, our school health and nutrition personnel, our Ndep coordinators and tobacco control coordinators, and syempre sa inyo pong lahat na nakasama po natin in the past 2 hours para po sa first episode na ito ng Ndep webinar series. Maraming salamat po. Behind the scene, marami po tayong mga school health division na staff na nagsusupport sa atin, our coordinator, Ma'am Gurley, and ang atin po sa ICTS, we have Sir Paps, who's managing this live video. We have Miss Mitch, one of our colleagues at the School Health Division. So Sir Marlo and Ma'am Emily will now formally turn over to you para po sa next episode natin. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga nanood. Thank you, Irmi.
Thank you rin po, Sir Gian. And naway, tumutok po tayo ulit and supportahan po natin ang mga susunod pang episode ng ating Ndep webinar series. Gaya po ng pagsuporta natin sa first episode. Thank you.
Thank you po, Sir Gian and Ma'am.
Ingat po tayong lahat. Ingat po tayong lahat.
Maraming